Tim Shaw with you on Wednesday the 15th of May. Here are some facts about Canberra. We've got the highest median income in the country. We've got the lowest unemployment rate. However, we've got delays in development approvals for housing construction and some of the most expensive rates and charges for owning your own home in Australia. According to today's Canberra Times, the Chief Minister has defended his government's record on a 2012 pledge that a 20-year tax reform agenda would be revenue neutral. Now, if that's been your experience, please feel free to call me right now on 6255 1206. But my research tells me that tens of thousands of Canberrans are struggling to keep up with the fees, the charges and the taxes for the right to live in our city. And yesterday we learned that $500 million of your money is destined to be invested in low-income housing. So I suggest you get on the line now and get in the line, because public housing with these fees, rates and charges continuing to spiral might be your only chance to have a house here in Canberra. Joining me now is the Leader of the Opposition, Shadow Treasurer in the ACT, Alice Takoa. Very good morning to you.
Good morning, Tim.
Is it that bad? Is it that grim?
Well, obviously, for some households, it's not that grim because they can afford it. But there are tens of thousands of Canberrans that can't. So regardless of whether you can afford it, think about your neighbours, because there are certainly people in Canberra that are doing it tough.
I know of a street in Canberra where the neighbours took up a collection because a woman that's been living in a house for more than 40 years couldn't afford her own rates, and they took up a collection for her. Have we got a revenue neutral position as promised by Chief Minister Andrew Barr as Treasurer in 2012?
Look, it's been a monumental tax grab. There's no doubt about that. The rates revenue has gone up by 134% since 2012. Of course, we said it was going to triple in 10 years. That would be 200% increase. And now it's important to note that 134% increase is about double the combined impact of property price growth, population growth and inflation. So it is a massive gouge that we're talking about.
134% increase?
Since 2012.
And more than double?
More than double the combined impact of property prices, population growth and inflation. So there is no excuse. They can't say, oh, Canberra's growing. They can't say, oh, it's because house prices are going up. They can't say it's just the cost of living. Those three combined is only about 60%.
What would the Canberra Liberals do?
Well, we've got to cap it. There's no doubt about it. And I know that that's tough because all governments need revenue. But at the end of the day, the revenue that governments collect has come from hard-working taxpayers. It is not government's money. It's the citizens' money. And that has to be front of mind in every single decision that a government makes. Because at the moment, it gets treated like monopoly money by Andrew Barr and his government. And it's going to be compounded tenfold if we get Bill Shorten in the lodge as well.
Why?
Well, in the ACT, we've got this sort of perfect storm happening in the property sector. You've got banks undervaluing properties. You've got the ACT Revenue Office overvaluing properties. You've got banks not wanting to lend. You've got the cost of land. You've got rates. You've got land taxes. And then if you throw into the mix what Bill Shorten is proposing for negative gearing, that's going to have a devastating impact, not just for homeowners, but importantly for renters as well. There are going to be no winners as a result of that cocktail of Andrew Barr and Bill Shorten.
I have said many times on this program that under the current negative gearing rules, you're able to deduct the expenses on your property. We've got tenants paying more than $500 a week, and I know of two young women living on Northbourne Avenue, both hardworking young women, paying more than $500 a week. The owner of that property is being taxed more than half the cost or half the income that they receive from the rent. Now, that's a combination of the rates and the charges the water charges, a whole bunch of other things. On top of that, they've got their body corporate fees. Now, that's not Andrew Barr, the Treasurer's responsibility, body corporate fees. But when you claim those deductions, you're not claiming the deductions from Andrew Barr's ACT government. You're claiming it from
the Commonwealth.
The Commonwealth. So my observation, respectfully, to the Chief's attitude to taxing property owners here is I can tax them as much as I want. I'll tax them as much as I can get away with, and they'll claim that deduction from the federal government. On top of that, we read yesterday, on top of the 20-year cost regarding to the tram, it's somewhere heading north of the construction cost plus operation maintenance. It's at $1.5 billion that's got to be repaid at about $60+ million a year. $500 million of ratepayers' money is now going to be reinvested in affordable housing. How's all that going to add up?
Well, it's all just musical chairs, but unfortunately, there certainly aren't enough chairs for everyone. And the reality is, people are being squeezed, no matter whether they're a renter, whether they're a homeowner, whether they're a prospective buyer, whether you're a business owner, absolutely everyone. And when you're a jurisdiction as small as ours, and you've got New South Wales just 10 or 20 minutes away, all that we're doing is creating a great advertisement to invest and live in Queanbeyan. And I'm sure Tim Overall and all the other councillors there in Queanbeyan are licking their lips because we're driving people over the border. And people might say this is an extreme situation, you know, or we're talking about hypotheticals. It's real. It is real. There are hundreds, if not thousands of people that either have moved or are going to move over the border because they can't afford to live in Canberra.
But it's okay, because Andrew Barr will deliver us a big whopping surplus in this budget 2019-20, won't he?
Well, in 2001, the ACT Labor government had revenue of $2 billion. Now they've got $7 billion. Again, that increase is about double inflation and population growth. So really, they're swimming in cash, yet they still can't make a surplus. You just beg the question, where's all the money going?
How many times
are your services getting better?
How many times has Andrew Barr promised us a surplus?
Oh, look, the surplus is in the never, never. It's always next year, always next year. You know, it never happens because they can't control their spending. But, you know, they're certainly pretty good when it comes to collecting revenue.
Tell me what happened in the Assembly yesterday. You brought these matters to the attention of the Assembly. The response from the Chief was?
Oh, just another delusional response that all their changes are revenue neutral and it's not really having an impact on Canberra households. And obviously it is. And as I said earlier, whilst there are many people in Canberra that can afford these increases, there are many that can't. I
spoke to a buyer of a property. They're not doing it until after July the 1st this year. And I said, how much stamp duty would you be likely to save? He said about $8,000. And I said, have you checked your rates? Have you checked your body corporate, etc., more than $4,000 a year are the combined charges. So that notion of saving on stamp duty, even if you took out the body corporate, you're talking about over the next 4 years effectively paying the equivalence of what that foregone stamp duty was. I understand the transitional nature of this, but what's the worst case scenario we're looking at here?
Well, you know, the government claims they're abolishing stamp duty. Stamp duty revenue is still bringing in more money today than when they announced this abolition in 2012. So they're getting the best of both worlds. They've cranked everyone's rates through the roof, yet they're still bringing in record stamp duty. This is not fair. This is not something that's making the ACT attractive for investment. If we want to make Canberra the best place in the country to live, we want to make it the best country to invest and to grow a business, taxes are so important.
How long would you cap rates for if you're elected Chief Minister October 2020?
Oh, look, we're going through that now. We've got to see what's in the budget this year and also next year. But what is absolutely clear is that these rate increases cannot continue. If we're serious about making the city attractive, we're serious about making it affordable, then we can't keep taxing people out of their existence.
Former Federal Court Judge Dennis Cowderoy has been appointed as the ACT's first Integrity Commissioner. There was some political argy-bargy over the initial candidate for the job. Is everyone happy with Justice Cowderoy's appointment?
Look, I believe so. He got the tick of approval yesterday. He got that vote up in the Assembly unanimously. All 25 people voted for him as the Integrity Commissioner. I think he's a good choice, and importantly, we're going to have a cop on the beat making sure that the dodgy issues that we've seen in the past in the ACT Labor government don't go on in the future.
I want to ask you about sentient dog care in a moment. Steve from Banks, go ahead.
Good morning, gentlemen. Look, just a quick comment, Alistair. I've heard you say there a couple of times that many households in Canberra can afford it. And I understand what you're saying, but keep in mind that it still comes at a cost. We still have to make sacrifices in other areas. We still have to say no to something else or to decline other areas that might interest us because we've got to make this extortionate payments to the government for our rates. So I understand what you're saying when you say it, but it still comes at a cost. Just because they can afford it doesn't mean that it's sort of money laying around.
You're spot on, Stephen. And it's twofold. It's obviously what's the opportunity cost? You know, what are you having to cut back on in order to pay for these rates and land taxes? But secondly, even if you are paying it, are you getting value for money? What are you actually getting in return for those ever-increasing rates, taxes, fees and charges?
Steve, give me an idea. How much of your rates gone from and to? Like previously, what, a rate bill of $2,000 a year is suddenly now $4,000 plus? What are you paying?
Yeah, look, it's probably still a little bit short of that in terms of what we pay for rates, but it's certainly doubled, there's no doubt of that. And in terms of services, I don't see a commensurate sort of rise in services. Everything else is too hard. They stop cutting the grass, they stop watering the trees, they die. They stop looking after sports fields, they start looking after everything on the margins, and it starts geographically. They slowly work their way from the outer rings to the inner circle, but there's just no value for it. I just don't get it. Even Access Canberra, I went in there the other day, I looked on the phone app and it said that there was less than 1 minute waiting. I was there for 25 minutes.
Yeah, okay. You're exactly right. It's a value proposition. If people could see that their money was being well spent, at least you could say, I'm getting something for it.
I'm getting bang for buck.
But when it's going through the roof and services are getting worse, it's just a basic gouge.
Steve, thanks for your call, my friend. Appreciate it. Steve from Banks there. In short, you'd cap rates. You've got to look at whether you could cap it for a term. But as part of that value proposition, you've got to ask the people of Canberra, what are you prepared to forego, but on the basis of improved services? 25-minute wait at Access Canberra when you're told that it's a minute's wait.
These are all the things.
Not getting cut.
These are bread and butter municipal services that every single regional council in Australia seems to be able to deliver better than we can in the ACT.
Tell me what goes on a democracy sausage in the K family, please.
Well, it probably involves me getting up at about 4 a.m, going to the Gold Creek booth, setting up, putting up all the signs in the wrap, then sitting down with a thermos and guarding all the signs to make sure none of the opposition come and take them. And then come about 7:45, you get the rundown from the AEC, tell you what you can and can't do for the day. And then you stand up for the next 10 hours handing out flyers. You then do some scrutineering and go and have a drink at the victory party.
Democracy at work. Thank you for coming in this morning, Alistair Coe. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim.
Alistair Coe, Leader of the Canberra Liberals, Shadow Treasurer. We'll speak to Mr Coe certainly ahead of the 2019-20 budget. And we'll catch up with Alistair Coe too on the post-budget breakfast, proudly brought to you by Canberra Airport, taking the Tim Shaw Breakfast Show on the road on Wednesday, the 5th of June.